Hi, I'm Dave Cawley, host of the podcast series Cold. Cold Season 1 focuses on the unsolved disappearance of Susan Cox Powell in 2009. You're about to watch raw video I collected while investigating the Powell case. This video comes from July 7, 2010, when US Marshals conducted a hidden camera interview with Susan's father-in-law, Steve Powell, in South Hill, Washington. Cold is the most accurate, comprehensive retelling of the Susan Powell case. You can find it at thecoldpodcast.com or anywhere you like to listen.
Mark? Yeah. Okay. All right. Door shut? Yeah, it shuts. Yeah, just locks. So don't go out and shut it. Let's put this down here. See that we put down. It's nice weather up here. What's it like down there? It's been a little hot. Oh, okay. Do you have another card by any chance? I didn't have an email address either. I can't even get this mouse to show up. Thank you. I can't shut this.
I'm going to put my personal email on here too, because a lot of times when I'm out of town doing whatever, it's kind of hard to get a hold of me. So.
Okay. Thank you. You guys mind if you guys recording this meeting, or do you do that?
No, that's all.
Oh, okay. I mean, do you mind if I record it, just so I know it's...
No, not at all.
Okay. We get this computer to shut down. Can you see the mouse?
How's time going?
Oh, thank you. Thanks, Mark. Yeah. Oh, they're fine. Everybody's fine. I think Josh is over with the boys at an activity this afternoon.
Oh, that's good. How are the boys doing for you then?
Oh, very well. Yeah, they're doing famously. They don't, I mean, they miss their mom occasionally, and I think that's an unfortunate thing. But they're pretty happy about things, I mean, Braden's particularly Charlie talks about her a lot. He'll say, well, mommy did this way, or mommy cooked the meal that way, or mommy did this, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Braden is the one that has seemed to miss her as her presence, what I mean? That's what I'm perceiving from him. And when I sit down and just bring her pictures up on the computer, he gets really happy and, kiss her picture, and then he'll run off and play. So he's pretty happy just to see her, to know she's out there somewhere. That's a good thing. I don't even know what to say. I want to shut this down, but I can't. I think it's frozen up. Maybe if I go Control-Delete. But, that doesn't do anything either.
It's stubborn, huh?
Yeah, this is gotta get that. I mean, I can't even get the mouse. To show it. See, I'm just not even. I don't know. Yeah, I think that's what I'm going to do. I hope the email I just sent went through. I was going to try to get a hold of this guy later or tomorrow. Okay, so anyway, everything seems to be fine. I mean, we don't, this obviously is, I mean, I'm going to sit that there. Hold on. Right there. I can't look. Put the other card in. Make it like that. Yeah, I mean, believe it or not, things are done. I mean, this has affected I don't think it's affected him that much, you know, I mean, Josh probably took care of a lot of things before he left Utah. I mean, I'm sure the first couple of weeks were probably pretty horrendous. I know they were for him. I mean, he went through a lot there and just trying to figure, I mean, he lost his job,
Right.
he lost Susan's job, you know, lost Susan, I guess you could say.
Mm-hmm.
You know, pretty much worried about losing his house. I mean, this whole thing has been just a nightmare for him, you know, so.
Has the media backed off though?
Yeah, they don't come to our house anymore. They haven't come to our house for probably, I'm gonna say, trying to think what the last one, there was something the Coxes were doing. Every time they do something strange, somebody comes to our house, knocks on the door with a cameraman and a reporter, and they'll be standing out, I mean, they kind of ambush you, you know, they're out there on the porch with a camera when you walk up, and they open the door. So they're not really doing that much anymore. It's been, like I say, it's been a couple of months, and I think it might have been when Cox's had their little desert search and
Right.
whatever it was.
Yeah.
No, it was after that, probably the next search when they did, I think they did another search, I don't know, we can't keep
There was
track.
one about 6 weeks ago.
Yeah, that was probably the last time we heard from the media,
Okay.
yeah. But, yeah, we don't, I mean, obviously, those people, I mean, we wouldn't even come near those people. I mean, they're hateful, they would like to lynch me and Josh both, you know, so it's not like, you know, then they ask rhetorical questions like, why aren't they helping in the search, and why aren't they doing anything to find Susan? You know, I'm saying, it's like, yeah, we're going to work with you to find Susan when you're not even doing anything to find Susan. Yeah, right. Yeah, so that's it. But I did have a couple of questions, and you know, we talked about, you know, this whole idea that I guess you guys are at least in contact with the West Valley City Police, and you know, Chief McLaughlin seems to indicate that nobody else is working on this. So.
Well, that's not true, because, I mean, we're working it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I wanted to focus on today. I wanted to get your thoughts, ideas, and opinions. I know Josh's attorney told him not to speculate, and I can understand and respect that. But I kind of want to hear it from you guys as to where we need to go looking. If we're going to be making out-of-country trips and everything, I need to get as much information as possible, because we can't just show up somewhere and, you know, just walk around with a photo and hope that we run into her.
Yeah.
So I need to collect as much information as you so that we can go forward.
But you guys are definitely working as marshals. You're not working as private investigators on your spare time or in church or anything. Okay.
We're definitely not working with Mormon church.
Okay. Okay. Just wanted to find out, because to me that was something that came up. You know, I've discussed it with family, and you know, everybody's pretty suspicious of the Mormon church's involvement in this, and because. I mean, frankly, they were very involved in my divorce, and they were most of the people that have been on the attack are Mormons here in this case too. So it's really they're kind of a vicious attack group is what they are, and you know, that's why even the bishop, you know, my ex-wife, my bishop too, you know, attacked me during my divorce and wrote things for the court and those kind of things. So I'm really suspicious, but I'll take your word for it. I didn't really suspect it too very much, but you never know, because they do hire current FBI and other types of agents to do their bidding, you know, to run their security.
Well, like I told you guys before, West Valley Police Department has been under a lot of scrutiny based on how they conducted themselves in totality. Yeah. So shortly before we came up and met with you last time, we were approached by the U.S. Attorney. And we were asked to basically take a look at everything and report back to the U.S. Attorney's Office what we thought. Okay. So with that being said, we were blind back then coming in, and that's when we kind of started taking a look at things. And Mark's had several other things going on, so it's mostly just been me. All right. Okay. That's kind of been working it. I've been in communication with the U.S. Attorney's Office. Luckily, you guys were 100% cooperative last time we were up here. They know that I'm up here now. As far as our involvement with other agencies, I've had limited contact with West Valley. Obviously, dealing with, you know, evidence and stuff like that. I know that's a real big concern of yours. And then I've got the disc here, the family photos, like I told you
I
guys.
hope this is recording, I'm sorry, yeah. Sorry, I'm playing around with this, but I am listening to you, I'm just trying to figure out. I thought I had it recording and it didn't seem to be functioning, so that's fine, but, No,
Is it going, do you want to start it over? Or?
No, that's okay. I just wanted to record the generalities so I'd have a general idea of what we talked about. It doesn't matter, any specifics don't matter. But anyway, so the U.S. Attorney's Office basically has felt like that. I mean, you said they examined the evidence of West Valley City Mass?
Well, the evidence is a sticky issue because West Valley's been extremely secretive with it, and they kept it in their clutches.
Right.
So for me to say, yeah, myself and the U.S. Attorney's Office have looked at the evidence, that wouldn't be true.
I thought that was what somebody said last time you guys were here, but maybe I misunderstood.
Well, that's what we were trying to do, and it's been a struggle to get them to cooperate as far as that.
Why? I mean, aren't they interested in finding Susan, or are they on this same Susan is dead kick? I mean, that's the thing that gets to me. All these people that assume she's dead or have, can't get off that. I mean, including her parents, I mean, wouldn't you want to hear an alternative viewpoint that suggests that maybe she's alive even though she's run off with some guy? I mean, maybe that bothers them because they have had problems with their daughters. I mean, definitely they have. I probably told you that their oldest daughter, Mary, was divorced at age 21. These are good Mormons. He's been in leadership positions in the church locally and so on. She divorced at 21. Their second daughter, which is in between Mary and Susan, that's Denise, had 2 children from her high school boyfriend. And then she moved in with another boyfriend and ultimately married him, had 2 children, had an affair while she was married. He divorced her. She doesn't have custody of any of those children. And so now Denise, has 4 children, 2 by her first boyfriend, 2 by her husband, who she lived with for a while before they were married. Doesn't have custody of any of them. And she really, from what Susan said, she didn't want custody of any of them. She would, this is just an attitude thing, but it was like she'd rather drink, party, and smoke pot is basically the comments that I heard about this. So not that I don't know if she smokes pot. I'm sure she probably drinks. She's definitely not what we would call an involved Mormon, what would you call it, an active Mormon.
Right.
But she definitely has some problems, and the Coxes definitely have problems. And now the third daughter, of course, is Susan. Mm-hmm. And, the Coxes have portrayed her as having this enormously secret life going on of emails behind Josh's back.
Attention, if there's a Daniel Bennett in the library, would you please come to the information desk?
So Susan had this secret life going on with, talking about getting a divorce, talking about this and that, according to her parents. I don't know how much of it's true. I'm not privy to any documentation of any kind. In fact, we kind of doubt that it's true. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Coxes say they set up a secret bank account for her so she could have money, supposedly. She didn't need any secret bank account. That's probably the main thing that makes me question what they're saying. Because if they set up a secret bank account for her, Susan didn't need any money. They were making quite a bit of money. They were doing very well financially. Mm-hmm. Josh had been in his job. He's an IT person like you. He'd been in the job for, I think, almost 2 years, same job. He worked as a temporary for about a year and a half or so, and I think he'd been a permanent employee for 6 months or a year, and he was making more than Susan, and between the two of them, they were making over $90,000 a year. So, that's not a bad income in Utah. That's a really pretty substantial income in a home like they were in, which not a huge house, not a lot of expenses. They were just doing well. Yeah. So to suggest that they were having financial problems, not true. Not true at all. Mm-hmm. But anyway.
So where did you think she is?
Well, you mentioned, Alina said you mentioned Brazil the other night. So Because obviously you were alluding to the comments that I made in my, what I submitted to the FBI.
Well, if you remember last time when we were finishing off, you had mentioned that as well.
Oh, did I really? Oh, maybe I did. Okay, so you have you read what I sent to the FBI?
No, I don't. I guess you could say the FBI is a sister agency. But cooperation between two agencies is similar to what we're experiencing with West Valley right now.
Really? Well, Gary France was here.
Yeah.
With you guys when you came last month. What's with that?
Well, he's up here, and obviously we're dealing with the FBI down in Salt Lake.
Right, Russ Johnson.
Right. And Russ Johnson hasn't wanted to talk, hasn't done anything. The only communication Russ would have with me was in getting the airbag issue resolved. That's the only communications I've had with him. And realistically speaking too, the U.S. Attorney's Office wants us to kind of step back from everything that's already been done and come in with some new perspective, new ideas, which is obviously why we're here, to get your take on things, so that he and I can put together our best educated guess and start putting things in motion as far as things that haven't been done yet. Okay. As far as looking for Susan.
Well, I sure wish I knew what they've done, and if you don't know what they've done, it just seems like a whole waste of time and a lot of work.
Well, everything will get passed to the U.S. Attorney's Office, and it's going to be cross-checked. And then once, I've got like an outline of kind of where I want to go and what I want to do with this, then we're going to start cross-checking with everybody else. And it's like, how serious did they take it? If they did look into something you brought up, did they put their best foot forward? That's what we need to determine. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, I mean, I gave the information I sent out. I mean, it's been months ago now, and I'm just, I think if I had a private investigator on this, and obviously, if I could afford it, I probably would. Maybe do it myself. But the bottom line is, it just seems like it was almost a no-brainer. I thought they would have found her by within weeks. Not even months, just weeks of getting the information I have. Now, I guess part of my question is, what kind of resources are they putting into this? I mean, obviously it keeps bouncing. I contacted the Henderson, Nevada police. I contacted St. George. I've been in contact, not recently, but, early on I was in regular contact with West Valley City Police. And then in February, I shifted over and contacted the FBI. When I called them, they said nobody's working on the case, but we knew that wasn't true because Josh had met the agent, Russ Johnson, in January, so we knew there was an FBI involvement here. So then at the end of February, on February 24th, I met with the FBI, and I gave them, an entire rundown, timeline, everything, where I thought she was, what I thought she had done, and then at the end of that month, probably maybe the 1st of March, I sent them pages of information following up on that, basically a written version of that. Which,
so the FBI does have.
Yeah. They have everything, yeah. I'm not saying they have everything because obviously, I think about this all the time. And, other things come up. I have friends that I talk to about this all the time, every week. There's some people that I just give it's like giving an automatic update. The marshals were here Monday, the blah, 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 that happened. I came up with this idea. What do you think about this? I got friends who are involved. I got relatives all over the country that are looking at this too. So, we're coming up with our own ideas and our own thoughts. And, so basically, what I think happened, if that's what you want to hear, you want to hear what I actually think happened. Okay, let's start back in February of 2009. Okay, because about that time, and I can probably find an exact date for you, but it was about that time. Josh and his boys went on a camp out. It was a wintry night, and they went out. They left at 10 p.m. and they went out, and they slept in their van, which they frequently do. In fact, I don't think he even has a tent. They usually sleep in the van. And when he and Susan and the boys went on campouts, I'm pretty sure that's the way they traveled. They slept in their van. He came back and he told me about it afterwards, and he said, I will never do that again until I get, no, he didn't say it that way. He said, I plan to do this again next year, but I will have a generator and a heater when I do it next time, because we froze our off. That's the way he put it. We froze our off, and that will not happen again. I will have a generator and a heater. So 2 weeks before Susan disappeared, he had a generator and a heater. So she knew he was going to go on another snow camp out. He had the equipment that he said he would have the following year to do that. But let's back up a little bit more, because in early 2009, Susan told him that she was suicidal. When Josh told me this, I told him, I don't believe it. But let's just say that when I look back on it in retrospect, now I look at it and I say, I think Susan was planning on absconding in April of 2009. That's what, or May, April or May. That's what I think the plan was, and I'll tell you why. Because the guy that I posit that she left with was Stephen Koecher, you've heard that name, Koecher, moved to West Valley and moved to St. George, Utah from Salt Lake City in April of 2009. I think the plan was to basically abscond about that time, because when he moved there, he still had a job with his dad's newspaper. His dad is the editor of some Clipper or something, of some small newspaper up in Salt Lake City. And he continued to work in the internet advertising department for that newspaper, but that ended within a month of his arriving in St. George because he wasn't doing the job. And the reason with his dad's newspaper. And again, I think the reason is because he didn't care. He wasn't going to be around anyway. Okay. So, for whatever reason, I think I've tried to come up with a surmise as to why she decided not to go, because obviously he was committed. He was already heading south. He was in St. George. I think that what happened is she was planning. I mean, I was pretty naive. I think I'm still pretty naive about some. I don't know how the criminal mind works, but I still feel like I'm naive. I ain't stupid, so some of this stuff's coming together. Mm-hmm. So I think that what she did, she probably looked at that and said, I can't leave a suicide note in my own writing saying I committed suicide or I'm committing suicide, because number one, they're not going to find a body. Number two, that maybe she's done something. I know you guys probably aren't going to talk to me about your investigation, but it has made me suspicious that she's not just a missing person. Anyway, so the bottom line is, to me, that was the plan. So he languishes down in St. George for 6 months, probably coming up to West Valley City as often as possible to visit her and spend some time with her and screw her. not paying his landlord, but he was coming up to West Valley City, visiting his parents in Bountiful, and coming up to West Valley City to visit Susan. Again, my surmise, that's my assumption, because he was at West Valley City in the morning of Thanksgiving Day, and he came back that evening. Now, Josh and Susan were gone from about noon till about 6 p.m. or something. I don't know if he even knows exactly when. They were there in the evening, and they were there in the morning. And so was Stephen Koecher, coincidentally. So I don't know what happened or how long he stayed there or anything, but that was 2 weeks before she disappeared. So on the night of December 6th, which is a Sunday night, Josh and the boys head out again late at night. This time it was at midnight. And this is typical of Josh. This is we left him at home, and I don't know if we broke him of the habit of doing that to us, but those are the kinds of things we had to deal with, and Susan was still dealing with that. We're still dealing with that. I mean, he's there now, and it's the same thing. He has not changed a bit. So he leaves at midnight, and he probably had planned to leave early in the afternoon, is my guess, for that camp out. But he left at midnight, and the next evening he comes back, my understanding, and the police are at his house, and they're asking him. He's he goes in to talk to the West Valley City Police, and they start telling him some things, telling him some lies, like, for example, Charlie says that Susan was with you on this camp out, and Josh says, he said that, huh? Yeah, right. That's what the West Valley City Police said. And the fact is, there were some other things too. And of course, that kind of an interrogation. Ben, and so on, and then he promptly got himself an attorney. So anyway, so here's what I think happened. Susan left after Josh left, and I don't know if she left immediately, but she probably didn't wait too long. I'm guessing probably she waited a couple of hours to make sure Josh was long gone. And I'm assuming that again, this is all stuff, I'm not even sure that my family even believes all this stuff, but I'm telling you things that, from my perspective, and things that I believe happened. So what happens is, on that particular weekend, Koecher was in St. George, and he had a Christmas party scheduled for Monday night. That is the 7th, the day she disappeared. So clearly, to keep appearances up, he attended the Christmas party. Monday evening, December 7th. But he left abruptly. That's what his friends say. You know, he had dinner, then he didn't stick around for conversation or small talk or anything. He just left abruptly. That's the way they describe his departure. I think he went to West Valley City directly. The next morning, according to his, and these dates are now kind of in flux and in question because I read the families or the Koecher, there's some people that have put on timelines and websites. But the next morning, according to the first accounts, he had gone over to Ruby Valley. To the effect that, he knew I didn't live with my parents. Why did he go there to see me? That kind of thing. So to me, I look at it and I say it was some kind of a ruse. Why was he going there? He wanted to place himself and give himself a reason for being up in West Valley City. I mean, the guy's unemployed. His family says he put over 1,200 miles on his vehicle the week he disappeared. The week before he disappeared, he put 1,200 miles on his vehicle, going up to West Valley City, going over to Ruby Valley, Nevada, and when he was in Ruby Valley, Nevada, he they had lunch with him. They invited him in for lunch, spent 2 hours there with them, and he said, I'm on my way to Sacramento. Now they said originally that was on December 8th, then somebody else said, well, we saw him blah, blah, blah on December 8th, and so they changed their story and said, well, then maybe it was December 9th, but I take their first story as being more accurate because it was early on, it was shortly after the guy disappeared, and their memory to me would have been better at that time than later, and they probably knew it was on Tuesday morning and it was on December 8th. And that indicates to me that he probably headed for West Valley City on the night of December 7th. She probably called him early that day and said, I've implemented the plan, I'm gone, we're leaving. So he comes up, and they head over to Ruby Valley, Nevada. His girlfriend's parents did not see anybody with him. I mean, nobody asked about it. I don't think that was even an issue. They didn't look for anybody with him. I'm guessing she was with him, and I'll tell you why in a minute, because I'm guessing he picked her up or went to see her and spent the night with her on the night of the 7th, and at somebody's house. So somebody in West Valley City, as far as I'm concerned, somebody in West Valley City knows what's going on. I don't know who it is. It's probably the same people he played volleyball with in West Valley City on the morning of Thanksgiving Day, because his family's timeline says he played volleyball in the morning, then he went up to Bountiful in the afternoon, visited with his parents, and then in the evening of Thanksgiving Day, he went back to St. George. He went in the evening of the 7th, evening of Thanksgiving Day, he went back to West Valley City, quote unquote, for a piece of pie. That's what he said. I'm going back to West Valley City for a piece of pie. So he goes back to West Valley City and then at some point heads back to St. George. I don't know when that was. He could have spent the whole weekend in West Valley City, and I would really love to know. Josh doesn't remember anything about Thanksgiving Day. I'd like to know if Susan took off to go to the store, in the morning, and then took off to do some other errands in the afternoon, what she did on the weekend. Susan had every Wednesday and Thursday off. And she's claimed that she was going to the temple frequently on those Wednesdays and Thursdays. And it was so important to her that occasionally, if Josh had the car at work, she actually on one occasion borrowed her babysitter's car, the daycare provider loaned her the vehicle to go to the temple. And going to the temple is not that important. I don't know if you guys, if you're Mormons or not, but the fact is, it's not that urgent that you have to borrow somebody's car to go do a session, because none of it's scheduled. You just show up, you show your temple recommend, and you go in and go through an endowment session for the dead. And anybody can do it, not just you. So for her to borrow somebody's car to do it, to me it doesn't show commitment, it shows something else is going on. Now, she also, the last couple of months before...
What date did you say she wanted to do that?
Did what? To the temple?
Within the temple, or was that just at random?
It was frequently on Thursdays. And my guess is he probably came up on Thursdays, and she very well may have gone to the temple, but she had Wednesdays and Thursdays off, and Sundays every week. Wednesday, Thursday, and Sunday. Josh had Saturday and Sunday off. So she had Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays. So if he came up on Wednesdays or Thursdays, and if, you can probably verify that from the cell phone records. I don't know if the FBI has looked into this. I mean, they probably, I gave all this information in February, and I really kind of expected that if I were them, I would have gone through his car and looked for evidence of Susan's hair. So on Wednesdays and Thursdays, she's spending her time and at the temple and doing other things. And she also signed a contract. Josh was not too happy about it with a chiropractor. She had a chiropractor that she was seeing. I don't know what it was, about once a week for the last 2 months before she disappeared. And, it's only in retrospect that I don't think I've even mentioned this to Josh, but in retrospect, I look at that and I say, another opportunity to leave the kids with my daughter Jenny, who lives in West Jordan. She's my estranged daughter. And this girl really they spent no time Jenny never spent time with Josh or Susan. But that last couple of months, Susan seemed to get really close to Jenny for some reason. And she had Jenny watching the kids so she could she could go to the chiropractor on this weekly visit or whatever it was. And again, if this guy was coming up on those days, then she'd certainly go to the chiropractor, but she could also spend an hour or two with him while Jenny was watching the kids. Mm-hmm. So I would just say, if you can, I don't know who the chiropractor is, I could probably find out for you, but if you can find out when she went to the chiropractor and how often, that might be an interesting thing, and find out if she, if it was every week. I'd ask Josh, was it every week? And if he says yes, but then the chiropractor says, well, she only came once a month, then there's something, we know something fishy there, Go ahead.
Your daughter, you said she's estranged?
Yeah. She's been estranged since my divorce, and it took me a while. I only figured out why after she came over and accused me of being involved in Susan's disappearance. She came to my house unannounced, and she asked me specifically, she said, when did Josh tell you he was going to kill Susan or whatever the way, I don't know exactly how she put it, it's been January that she did this. And I basically threw her out of my house for accusing Josh and for accusing me, of being involved in Susan's disappearance. And she said, well, of course you were involved in it because you hated her. And, that's bullshit too. Total bullshit. Not even close to the truth. It's probably diametrically opposed to it. But anyway, not going into that, but the fact is, my daughter Jenny has hated me since our divorce, and my ex-wife and I even get along, but I don't get along with Jenny. And I couldn't figure it out until Michael started reading through the divorce papers, and he was, this is my son, Michael. He happened to see the box of papers in my closet, and he started reading through them, and he said, he didn't even tell me he was doing into our divorce, you know, her family started saying things about, oh, Steve is abusive and he's controlling and he's all this other stuff, you know. But anyway, that came later. So Michael could see the pattern here. The point being that at one point, my ex-wife was trying to keep the kids away from me, and Michael and Alina wanted to be with me. She wouldn't let them even call me on the phone. And one day, Michael was at home with Jenny, and he said, I want to call my dad. I want to go over to see my dad. And Jenny got really upset with him, and she grabbed him by his ear and dragged him across the room. And he's never recovered his hearing in that ear. I mean, he's got partial hearing because of what she did. When I heard about it, I called CPS, Child Protective Services. Because and they came out and investigated. They didn't talk to me. They didn't talk to Michael. They didn't talk to Jenny. They only talked to my ex-wife, and she said, yeah, we're going through a divorce, and you know, that's pretty standard stuff when you're going through a divorce. He's bitching and moaning about things that aren't really happening. Okay, and that's the way CPS handled it. They just gave her a letter of exoneration and said, it's just your ex-husband is complaining about things. And there were a lot of other things I put in. I think that's why Jenny has hated me ever since, because I had to call CPS on her. And I completely forgotten about that, totally, until Michael mentioned that a couple of months ago. So that's why she's estranged. But getting back to this story, she's spending time at Jenny's place, mainly just to have her watch the kids.
Hey, I'm in the middle of an interview. Take care of it. No, I'm going to be gone for a few days. Take care of it. Bye.
Okay, but anyway, so the fact is, so she's going to this chiropractor, going to the temple on her Wednesdays and Thursdays off, and that sort of a thing. And God only knows if that was her opportunity, because Josh worked Monday through Friday. So this would give her plenty of opportunity. And again, I just find that very unusual, just to say the least, that somebody would borrow somebody's car to go to the temple. But anyway, okay, so getting back to this whole scenario of the week of December 7th. So in my scenario, he arrives there Monday night the 7th. He is with her on the 8th. He goes over to Ruby Valley, Nevada, meets with her parents. He tells them, I'm on my way to Sacramento. Okay, and I will say it's only in the last maybe week or two that I actually kind of put an idea on whether or not he went to Sacramento. And I think he actually did go to Sacramento. I think they both went to Sacramento. And I think they were there, they got there the evening or the afternoon of the 8th, and they were there on the 9th. And on the 9th of December, or on the 8th, I think they got married. So I'm saying that's my conjecture. I think they went over there for documentation, because when I first gave the information to the FBI, I just said, well, Josh said Susan didn't have a passport, but I said she did, and maybe she had her passport sent to his address, Koecher's address in St. George, and then I put in my documentation that, well, maybe she went by a name like her middle name or something, Marie Cox or Marie Powell, her maiden name is Cox. I mean, again, totally naive. I mean, when I started reading this Bonnie Sweeten case, I'm saying, this girl, Susan, she worked for Fidelity Investments, she worked for Wells Fargo Investments. This girl had access to tons of private information. I mean, that's the name of the game with these banks. That's why there's so much identity theft, because they don't take care of it. They don't, and you get somebody in there that's an insider, I mean, this is insane, but
documentation, maybe driver's licenses that didn't have Utah on them. Clearly. I mean, they're not going to have a Utah driver's license and look like they look. And, you know, I'm guessing that he probably stopped shaving on December 7th, and he probably has a beard. These are guesses, obviously. I mean, you know, they're not going to go out there without some kind of an identity change, you know. Susan can change her appearance at will. I mean, I could show you 20 or 30 pictures of Susan, and you would not recognize that it's the same person. I mean, Susan can truthfully change up her appearance. She's a hairdresser. You know, that's what she was trained to do before she was married, and that's what she did for a couple of years. And she still does it with her friends. So coloring her hair, changing her makeup, changing this or that. She could wear glasses. I mean, any number of things. Susan has plenty of opportunity, plenty of ways to change up her appearance. So they go over to Sacramento, maybe get some driver's licenses, maybe under maybe more than one assumed name, I don't know, but they needed some documentation. I'm assuming they must have got passports, unless they're not out of the country. I mean, I say they're in Brazil, but I mean, it's been occurring to me recently that maybe they could have just gone to Mississippi and nobody would have recognized them. I mean, nobody knows about this outside of, I mean, I even have friends that have been watching this. I had a friend the other day, it's about a week or so ago, and I sat down and and not the last time, a couple of times I saw her, I didn't even bring this up. She didn't bring it up. The last time I did, and she said, I didn't even make a connection between you and that particular, you didn't even make a connection. The fact is, she was pretty surprised, but the point is, you know, if Susan and Koecher went to, you know, Alabama or something, they could get away with anything. They, you know, just start a new life. You know, who knows? So the point is, I guess, sometimes they start a little older, and I'm guessing he probably was 19 when he went on a mission, and he probably came home 2 years later, so that would make it about 2001. And what I did is I went in, you know, I mean, there's so much information about this guy on the internet. He went to Brazil, and they said the Brazil Fortaleza mission, and when I went,
what mission was that?
Fortaleza, Fortaleza, and of course the church changes boundaries periodically, so I had to go back and find out what the boundaries are different now than they were back when he was on the mission. So today it's different, but back then the boundaries of the two principal metropolitan. The other one would be Terracina, Terrasina. So Terracina and Fortaleza would be the places that he would be most familiar with. And I suggested, again, naive, he probably went there, but he could have friends, just like in St. George. I think he's got a friend who knows where he is. I think he's got a friend in West Valley City who knows where he is. The fact is, there could be somebody in Fortaleza or I mean, neither one of them ever talked to me about the religion because they know how critical I am of it. So the bottom line is, you know, I've known for years Josh really has been kind of very so-so about the church, and even Susan, when they were living with me years ago, she said, we're only involved in the church, we want to stay in, no, how did you put it? I wrote it down somewhere, but I mean back then, but it was something like, we want to stay involved in the church because I don't want to disappoint my parents, like my culture is kind of a dysfunctional thing to do, because girls who go on missions, girls are not encouraged to go on missions, first of all. And those who do go on missions are, the people, the word is, anyway, at least when I was involved, and I'm sure it hasn't changed, it's because they haven't got married yet. If they aren't ready by the time they're 21, they go on a mission.
Sure.
And boys go on missions at age 19. But girls are totally discouraged from going at all, and only go if they aren't married. So her youngest sister is a returned missionary, is now married, and has at least one kid last time I heard. And I don't know how her marriage is, but all things being equal, unless her mother treated her better, maybe she got diagnosed and got on medication or whatever, and so the emotional abuse was mitigated or whatever. But it was still pretty bad when Susan was living at my house. Her mother was still calling her and making her cry just by screaming at her when she called. Even happened at work one time. And I told this to the FBI. Susan was doing my hair one day, and somebody came up and said, you have a call. She went and took the call. She came back, she was crying. I said, well, is there something wrong? And she says, yeah, my mother was screaming at me. She called her at work and was screaming at her. So, I mean, it was hard to believe, but that's the way her mother whatever. Now, her mother seems like she's got to be under medication now. She seems very, like she's in la la land the last couple of times I've seen her. So I'm sure she's either been diagnosed or they've balanced her medication or something. I have a son who's mentally ill, so this kind of stuff, when you see somebody who's mentally ill, you sort of start seeing some signs, and she has acted very, very mentally ill in my presence a number of times. So she's definitely got either bipolar or schizophrenia. And Susan resented the fact that her dad just never came between her mother and the daughters. But the fact is, the mother is definitely, I would be very interested to have that confirmed, but I know you guys thought it's probably not your business to do that. But the thing is, I'm about 90% certain that she's got some mental illness issues, and that's what created all these issues with the daughters, including Susan. Susan definitely had her mother's issues, with the emotional abuse of the kids. Not frequently that Josh is aware of, but I know Josh called me a couple of times and said he had to intervene between Susan and the boys. And I don't really think Susan is mentally ill. I don't think. She just didn't act like that to me. I think she was basically, but there could be something there. It's a hereditary thing too. But the fact is, Josh did intervene at least on one occasion that stands out in my mind when, he felt like that, she was really going overboard. And, and during their marriage counseling, he basically tried to get the counselor to talk to Susan about this problem, but the counselor felt that the main problem in their marriage was the fact that Josh liked to go camping on Saturday nights, and Sunday morning he didn't go to church. He was out camping. That was the main problem in their marriage. That Josh was too lukewarm about Mormonism. And of course, it was an LDS Social Services, yeah. Okay. And apparently this counselor was also reporting back to the ward bishop all the details of their sessions, and Josh couldn't get her to talk about the real core. He didn't hesitate to remind her when she was, going into one of her screaming tirades. He would definitely remind her that she was taking after her mother and that she needed to get it under control. So he was definitely trying to help her keep that under control. Her sister Denise, I've never heard any comments about Mary, the oldest sister, but the oldest daughter has basically stayed away from her parents to some degree, I think. She doesn't spend a lot of time with them, and now she's back at a military installation with her husband and has been there for some time. But the niece is a screamer too. So you get these three women together, Denise, Judy Cox, and Susan Powell. And that's mine, I think. Oh, it must be mine. Oh. Let me see if that's Josh, because he went, hello? Yeah, Josh, I'm here in this meeting with the marshals here. What's up? I'm at the library. Did you want to come and pick that thing up and sign for it or whatever? Yeah, it's just a CD, right?
Yeah.
What's on there?
Just a bunch of family photos.
Oh, it's a CD. What's on it, do you know? It just says, you're not going to come by then, or? Okay, anyway. Yeah, okay, well listen, I'm going to get off, but I'll just let him know. Thank you. Okay, bye. Okay, he just says that's fine, he'll just get it when they turn over all of his belongings. One of the comments he's made is, this is like, maybe, let's say, the maximum this is going to be is 700 megabytes, and he says they picked up something like, I don't know, 5 or 10 terabytes of information from him. So he's not really too happy that they're sending this back. They're not really giving him this data.
Well, this is the start, so I definitely needed to sign for it along here. I'm afraid I'm going to lose all the momentum I've got.
Well, when we're done, I'll give him a call again, and I'll see if I can get him to...
And even if I follow you over to the house, I mean, I just
let's see what it says here.
that's from me getting it from them, and then I'll just forward that real quick and just have him sign for it that he took custody of it.
Photo CD, huh? Now, is this something that, because see, we have all kinds of photos, and this might be just stuff we already have anyway, so it's like, Josh just feels like it's a slap in the face, it's an insult. But anyway, you talk about 5 terabytes of data, and they're sending this over, that's just ridiculous.
Right.
So anyway, we'll probably, I don't know if we'll want to even sign for it, but anyway, okay, so bottom line is, so as far as I'm concerned, it's very possible that Susan went over to Sacramento with Stephen Koecher. He said he was going to Sacramento. I think that's extremely possible. I don't see why they wouldn't, because I don't have any other way of accounting for the afternoon of December 8th and all day December 9th. So I'm guessing they were probably in Sacramento. They wouldn't have any reason to hang out in West Valley City. They'd want to be together. They'd want to be alone. Maybe for the first time that they wouldn't have to hide and be under scrutiny. They could just head back to his apartment down in St. George and do their thing and start their life together. So I'm guessing that they probably did go to Sacramento, and I don't know if you have any clue as to what identities they're using, but it's very possible they would have used those identities to get married in Sacramento. I'm guessing, again. And they probably would have gone to Sacramento to get California driver's licenses and so on, so they could divert the attention from their connections to Utah. That makes sense to me anyway. So then that's on the 9th, and then on the 10th, they're on their way back to St. George, Utah. I mean, he's definitely up there. I mean, confirmed by friends, confirmed by cell phone pings, confirmed by debit card transactions, all the way from, St. George over to Wendover, Nevada, which is due west of West Valley City. So he's got debit card transactions, and I believe it is on the 9th that they find a debit card transaction in Wendover, Nevada, which means they're heading back. And but on the 10th, they don't head back to St. George until the 10th. So somebody out in that area knows about this. Somebody, they were staying with somebody. I mean, by the 10th, this thing had gone viral. Everybody knew about this. I mean, this was a worldwide news story by the 10th. I mean, it was all over the internet. And so anybody, if they were trying to fool somebody, it wouldn't happen. But if somebody was in cahoots with them, then that's the only way they could have got away with it and spent the night in West Valley City. They wouldn't get a hotel, you know, because any hotel, somebody would recognize them coming into the hotel. Maybe not Stephen Koecher, he wasn't known by then, but Susan, yes, she was very well known by then. Her picture was everywhere. So they're heading back on the 10th. On the 10th, they're heading back to West Valley, to St. George, Utah from West Valley City. So they have debit transactions along the way, at least 2 of them. And then they get back to West Valley, St. George, presumably the night of the 10th. On the 11th, somebody actually saw him in St. George, somebody who apparently said they were locked out of their house, and he helped them get in. So somebody saw him, somebody confirmed that he was actually there.
Do you know who that was?
No clue. But somebody knows. His parents probably know. They probably talked to him. His parents have gone down to West Valley City, down to St. George and down to Henderson, Nevada, where he disappeared, and talked to neighbors and canvassed neighbors and the whole area, and have looked for his body in every field nearby. And just like Susan's parents, the same thing. Just cadaver searches, dogs, God only knows what they've done. But, the fact is, he gets down there, and on the 11th, they see him there, and on the 12th, and probably north of, as I recall, it's north of Boulder City. So he's down along Lake Mead, north of Boulder City, and east of Henderson, Nevada, which is only about 20 or 30 minutes away at the most. So we're talking about 20 minutes away. He's down there on the 12th. And the evening of the 12th, there's a debit card transaction in Mesquite, Nevada, which is on the way back to St. George. So he's down there in north of Boulder City at the very least on the 12th, and on had a habit of buying dinner with his debit card for $3 here and there, or if he was trying to make it look like he was traveling alone by buying small dinners, $3 dinners, because that seemed to be the pattern there. Every time he stopped, he didn't have cash. He paid $3 on his debit card for a dinner. Then occasionally he'd stop for gas, and it would be like a $30 transaction or something. So the bottom line is, he's back in he gets out of his car and walks away. And he had been trying to make a little money on the side by working as a solicitor for a window washing company. And he had the flyers on the seat of his car with the phone number visible, and the homeowners association, looked at the car for about 3 days, and they finally investigated, and they called the window washing company. Their number was on the flyers, and the window washing company basically said, he's got see if he'd come around soliciting window washing jobs, to see if they'd seen him, to see if they'd seen him leave his car. And then they found that in that neighborhood there happened to live a retired US Marshal. And he happened to have a surveillance camera system in his yard. And so they said, can you rewind that back 3 days ago? And he says, certainly. And 3 days prior to that, they see him walking away from his car with a purpose, according to the news article that talked about it. So he's walking away with a purpose. He's going somewhere. Now, the interesting thing is, that's on the 13th. And he has a friend named Greg Banks.
Sorry, one more time, name.
Pardon me?
One more time with that name.
Greg Banks. And Greg Banks was one of his, I think it was his group leader at church. You know, this guy was a leader in some word quorum or something, you know, and Greg Banks was the, Stephen Koecher was a counselor or something to Greg Banks. So, as it turns out, okay, Greg Banks, you know, had a cell phone call, and his cell phone, he called Stephen Koecher from Las Vegas the morning Stephen Koecher disappeared. And of course, he was asked about that because it sounded pretty okay, well, I'll just take care of it myself. Assignment, and Koecher apparently had some kind of an assignment he was supposed to do that day, but he was also in Las Vegas for some reason. Wow. So they're both in Las Vegas, and they're both supposed to be at church that Sunday in St. George to cover. Walked away from his car. I think probably the most likely person that was there waiting for him was Greg Banks. I think, I mean, obviously, there's no way to know that. But the bottom line is, going back to the 12th, the day before, I've suggested in the written documentation that I sent to the FBI, I suggested that they really need to look at that evening, and then he went down there again on the 13th and disappeared. So if they were using false identities, or maybe their identities that she came up with the week before they left, I don't know. I mean, if she came up with some identities at work on Friday, and you know, they left on, you know, a week later after she disappeared, then clearly they wouldn't have time to get a debit card in that name or a credit card in that name, so she would have to use the false identities, the driver's license they picked up in California. And you know, I think you have to have a driver's license to fly. Am I correct? Mm-hmm. Yeah. You have to have a picture ID. Camping on the 12th along Lake Mead. They were down there somewhere, either Boulder City or Laughlin or Lake Havasu, to pick up their plane tickets by paying cash, showing their IDs, and then the next day they fly out of there. I'm just guessing, you know. Again, who knows? So then they, I mean, the other thing is they could have picked up, I mean, you know, there are buses that go down to Mexico City from you know, probably from Arizona, and Texas and everything else, and if you went down there, you could buy tickets on the bus. I don't know what's going on. I mean, I'm just, you just sit here and you puzzle over these things, and you just say to yourself, what were they doing? What was he doing the day before he disappeared? Why did he go down there? And that's what I've come up with. But anyway, so, and that's pretty much, I mean, beyond that, the 13th he disappears, and nobody's heard or seen of him since. Heard of him or seen him since, and of course, Susan's gone too. And back then people looked at that and said, "Oh, there's no connection. They didn't disappear at the same time." Yeah, you know what I'm saying? They didn't disappear at the same time, so how could there be a connection? Well, when you look back on it 7 months later, they disappeared at the same time. Nothing even close to what happened to those two has happened since then in Utah that I know of. I think I would have heard about it. Maybe there have been some murders, and there have been a couple of this and that down there, but nothing quite like this that has the appearance of somebody disappearing, but no evidence of any body or of any kind, and even possibly some contrary evidence that you're not going to find a body. So anyway, so that's pretty much, and then now we ask, well, why Brazil? As I say, he went on his mission to Brazil, and I say, well, they maybe got some transportation to some other city where there's actually a flight directly to Rio de Janeiro or something, and of course she has Portuguese ancestry, so she's talked to me about wishing she'd gone on a mission for the church and maybe learn Portuguese and this kind of thing. I mean, she's interested in this stuff. That's that Portuguese lore. And for all I know, they could have gone to Portugal. I mean, the languages probably are interchangeable. I mean, it's kind of like going from here to Britain. Maybe you'd have some accent issues, but you'd be able to pick it up. I mean, if you knew Portuguese fluently, you could certainly pick up what you needed to know in Portugal fairly easily. And in fact, they could have even gone to Mexico for all I know. And Spanish is, once you know Portuguese, you probably can pick up Spanish, especially if you took it in high school.
Did Susan speak any other languages?
No.
She didn't speak.
Well, ASL. They don't have any sign language.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, she and Josh communicated with ASL, so she definitely knows ASL. She could pose as somebody who's deaf or somebody, I mean, she could do, who knows what she could do, She could pose as somebody who's deaf. And if she's in Brazil or Portugal or wherever she might have gone, she's probably going to be patronizing beauty supply outfits, because she did that all the time. She spent, I don't know, Josh, I think he said she's probably spent $100 a month at beauty supply places. I don't know, I mean, the police, I think they have all his checking account transactions, so she has the family's one and only debit card. And she bought the supplies. So anyway, number one, I would suggest that maybe, I don't think she's going to change that pattern. That just doesn't make sense to me. She's not going to change that pattern. So wherever she is, whether it be Brazil or Biloxi or whatever, I mean, she's going to be going to beauty supply stores, and continuing to buy what she needs, once a month or whatever. She didn't believe in the church particularly, but she was committed to it, and she liked it. It was a social outlet for her. And, if she got married in Sacramento under an assumed name, she probably got married in the temple in Brazil or wherever she went. So what I would do is I would get a list of people married in Sacramento on December 9th. I know that, and it could be Lake Tahoe. They could have gone to Lake Tahoe for all I know, because I've heard that that's a place where a lot of people go to get, married and get away with things like that. So, I mean, somewhere around there, maybe in one of those counties in California, again, long shot, whatever, but, maybe I don't know, and the church is probably not going to be cooperative at all. I mean, obviously, they're not going to say, oh yeah, we'll look at all of our temple records and see if that name comes up, or we'll look at all these names that you've given us on this list of marriages and sacramental or whatever. Yeah, they're not going to do that, but, if I had the time and the wherewithal, I would probably have already gone down to Brazil and just canvassed all the Mormon wards down there. I mean, I'm sure there are hundreds of them. I probably would have gone and talked to the, whoever I could just to find out if they were there. Because, somebody is going to recognize them. Somebody will have seen them. And if they went to Brazil, they probably would have posed as non-Mormons. Or of course, if she knew that the peoples whose identities she was using were actually LDS, then she could have gone and said, yeah, now we're ready to get sealed in the temple. We're married, here's our marriage certificate. We'd like to get sealed in the temple. We'd like to get baptized or whatever. I mean, so however she would do it, these chairs are pretty uncomfortable, aren't they? So.
And to the best of your ability, neither yourself or Josh know that Susan had a passport prior to her going missing.
Neither one of us know.
Josh never knew for her to apply one or get denied.
Never. No, she wouldn't get denied. I mean, if she applied for a passport under her name, she hasn't done anything. She's never, that I know of. But I mean, I don't think so. I think that we probably. I suppose she could have committed a felony at some point. I don't know, but I don't think so. And, Susan was, regardless of her, risk-taking behavior and all these other things that kind of characterize her, I just don't think she had any criminal history of any kind.
Is it true that Susan was in love with you?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's true?
That's true.
Okay. Can you tell me just a little bit about that?
Well, it's just, you have to look at it this way. Girls fall in love with their high school teachers. They fall in love with their, it's like an infatuation and that kind of a thing. So that's the truth. She was. And it didn't really change. It was obvious up to the last time I saw her, but who knows? And the last time I saw her, she was probably at least by that time involved with Steve Koecher, but Susan was able to have feelings about Well, the way she started out, what she started out with is she would come into, when she was living with me, is when that kind of stuff started. She would just come into my office after she took a shower and waxed her legs and just said, here, feel how smooth my legs are, and obviously that was, so that's kind of what, it started out from there. But yeah, she was definitely a different kind of a person. I'm pretty certain that certainly was only after I started reading about this Stephen Koecher disappearance and realizing that he spent time in West Valley City right after she disappeared, and his whole time in West Valley City to me is very compelling, not evidence but a compelling indication that he may have had some
To me, it seems like you guys got along fine.
We did. We got along very fine, yeah, very well. And Susan's parents, Susan actually told people, including her parents and probably including Jenny, that we had, we were like that. It was not true. We were more like that. It was really not true at all. But Susan actually, got into a conversation. And coming in, every night with something, here, let me show you, I've got this birthmark, it's back on the back of my thigh, that kind of, all kinds of things. Another time she and Josh, she's all dressed up for church, and she walks into my office and just walks in and stands up on a chair in my office and crouches down. And she says, and she takes her shoes off, and she says, I got these, see these surgical lines on my feet here. I had some bunions when I was growing up, and they were removed surgically. Josh, we had them paid for with, his insurance or whatever it was. It was taken. And she wanted to show those to me. She gets up, she's in a skirt, she crouches down on the chair, and I just, just sort of massage her feet a little bit and her calves, a little bit. And at that point, when my hands started going up her calves, she kind of stands up and on the chair and she says, "Hey, what are you doing?" And then she doesn't leave the office. She just stands there and looks out the window with her back to me for a few minutes because the point is, these kinds of things, it's not like, Susan was, I think she just liked to titillate is what she liked to do. And then, of course, then she goes back to her parents and says, oh, he was coming on to me and, he's a pedophile. And Josh says, Susan, you were 20 years old. A pedophile goes after little girls, or little boys. Pedophile, I don't know what the cutoff age is, but it's not 20-year-olds, I was in my 50s at the time that she was living at my house, but, there's no question about it. I was not dealing with a little girl. But she told, she and her parents, they just had a railing session against me at one point. And Susan said, well, I don't want to even see him. I don't want to go over to his house. And she'd tell that to Josh in her parents' presence. And then when Josh would come over to my place to spend time with me, she'd call him and say, I'm missing out on the time with the boys and the fun and whatever. And then he'd have to go and pick her up and bring her. You know what I mean? And whenever she'd come over to my place, it was always friendly. And it was frequently, there were frequently little titillating things that she continued to do. Even after, what happened is, after we got into it, pretty heavily in some ways, I told her that I was in love with her. And that's when it all ended, because she basically said, I'm your son's wife. Basically, you can't be, and that's what, doing things and there was some kind of a disconnect in Susan between some of the things that she liked to do and actually acknowledging the things that she liked to do. There was really a big disconnect there, and that's why after that, there was a period of time when she wouldn't even talk to me, and then after that, she was telling her parents, probably hoping, probably fearing that I might say something about alone together. And in February of 2009, we spent at least 3 hours in my bedroom together. And then one of those times, we spent more time because part of that time I was recording her singing voice. So I did it and had her stand in my bedroom closet, and we'd record some things. And we spent a lot of time together. And she wasn't uncomfortable being around me, and she wasn't afraid I was going to come on to her, and she wasn't afraid of anything. We spent about 3 hours recording music, and on both of those dates when she was here with Josh. And on one of them, I don't remember which one, but I also spent, I'm going to say, at least 2 or 3 hours in my bedroom recording her reading some stories for her children. Mm-hmm. So that if anything should happen to her or Josh, I recorded Josh too. We picked out a few stories and they read them and we recorded them. I got them. It was just raw material. I've never processed it or turned it into a CD or anything like that. But I've got the raw recordings of her reading stories, and the music. It's on my website. So she's there doing background singing on 2 of my songs on my website. So basically, she and I spent lots of time together. So to suggest that I hated her, or that we didn't get along, and she would frequently do things too. Just little things. When one time, at one point when we were sitting there recording things, she took off her shoes and sort of, I don't know if she wanted me. I didn't bother massaging. I really didn't want to get started on that stuff again. But she took off her shoes and she says, "Oh, I hope you don't mind my smelly feet." And in the past, she would have expected me to, probably get down there and kiss her feet or something. That kind of a thing. I didn't, so we just did our thing. But on another occasion, and just a couple of other things, I was the one. She didn't, when she had a problem and needed help with the kids, and we were on an outing or something, she'd hand them off to me, not to Josh. She felt like I was, I'm a very nurturing parent. That's why my kids all came to live with me and not with their mother. And she knows that. She'd hand the kids off to me. Her parents are saying things like, "Oh, the boys aren't safe at Steve's house." I don't know what they're trying to imply, but it's, pretty pernicious as far as I'm concerned to even imply something like that. But she would, and when she'd come and get the boys, I'd be holding, Braden like this. She'd come, she wouldn't just reach out and grab Braden, she'd press her breasts against my hands, to try to, whatever. And again, Susan was Susan. She did things like that. When she was nursing Braden, I remember that was summer of 2008, she came to visit, and she was right in the middle of nursing Braden, and she was staying at our place, okay? She stayed at our house that week, and the first couple of days, she would go in to a bedroom and shut the door to nurse Braden, okay? And then one day we went out to the Seattle Aquarium, and I saw a lady sitting there nursing her child, and I said, well, and when we go out to these activities, Susan would drape a blanket over her when she was nursing, right? Mm-hmm. So here we are, we're at the Seattle Aquarium, there's some lady over there nursing her child. And I pointed it out to Susan. I said, she's not even bothering hiding it. It's just a natural, normal thing to do. Mm-hmm. And after that, Susan never tried to hide it again. She would do it. She'd just pull it out and nurse the baby. Mm-hmm. On the train, they took a train ride. When she was sitting there on the ferry with me and with others, she would, in the park, those kinds of things, Susan just needed somebody to tell her she didn't need to be self-conscious about her body. That's basically what it was. She had to portray herself, this persona that she thought she had to do, but if she thought that it was okay to do it in the way she really wanted to do, Susan would go in the direction she really wanted to go, and that would have been more apropos for Susan to be more open about something like that. but her religion and her, you know, I'm sure that she still covered herself when she was at her parents' house, no doubt. But around me, no. You know, you get
leaving could have been motivated by you rejecting her?
I never rejected her. Never.
But
Am I rejecting her?
rejecting her is not, I guess, reciprocating her coming on to you at the level she was coming on to.
No, that wouldn't have anything to do with it. I don't think so. But then you're asking a question that you know. I thought of myself many times. I said to myself, I am her relief valve, because Josh is really hard to get along with sometimes. I really felt of myself as a relief valve, but that never changed. I mean, I still felt like I was that, whether we were doing things together or not. I really still felt like she could see me as a relief valve. I mean, even before they were married, she would invite me along on their outings together. I mean, I've been going on their outings with them since before. With the boys and Susan and Josh. And I don't know why they go to church activities and things with them, you know, or whatever, but they didn't go out on the fun outings that the boys liked. I mean, every time they came here, we'd at least go on the ferry on one occasion. I mean, you know, the ferry is always a fun thing. It's cheap entertainment, you know, you get on the ferry and, you know, you just go across the sound, and it's basically it's a flat fee coming from Bremerton to Seattle. You pay by the person going from Seattle to Bremerton. So we drive around the peninsula up to Bremerton, you know, drive the car onto the ferry, go across to Seattle, stop at Pier 51 and have dinner, and then head south to home or whatever. Seattle. The only time that she ever got really upset at me, that was she really came unglued and got out of control, the kind that Josh described to me, but I never saw. I only saw it on one occasion. I heard it on the phone, but I never saw it because they were down in Utah. But you know, she'd scream, and if she didn't, I think it only happened when she didn't know I was on the phone. She'd come into his whatever he had down there, his office or whatever he had in that house, and start screaming at him. And I think if she knew I was on the phone, that wouldn't happen.
Right.
But one time we had dinner down in Seattle, and Michael and I had a beer with dinner, and then we wandered around the pier for a couple of hours and looked at seagulls and whatever, you know, and then we got in my vehicle to go home, and I turned on the engine, and she just started screaming, a screaming tirade. I will not go 1 inch in this. I mean, she didn't say, you know, would you mind letting somebody else drive? She said, I will not go 1 inch in this vehicle with somebody driving who's been drinking. And, you know, I had one beer 2 hours before that. I don't know if you guys have beers. I mean, I know you can find beer. No, actually, I've had beers in Utah. So. I know. But anyway, so the thing is, that's the only time she ever really came unglued at me. And I mean, there was one other occasion that she kind of got upset at me, and she sniffed at me, and then she seemed to feel very regretful that she even sniffed at me. And after that, we just spent probably 2 hours together. We drove off somewhere and went to the pet store and did all kinds of things together. And it was like, you know, just a wonderful time with Susan together, you know. And she showed me the kinds of birds she liked and that kind of a thing. You know what I mean? So that was the only other time, but that was back probably in 2002 or something, 2003. But this was, you know, after they moved to Utah, you know, this whole thing about the beer, I mean, it was really out of control as far as I was concerned. Josh was very upset at her for, you know, not just asking me. I mean, I just said, you know, Susan, you can drive. I don't have to drive, and it doesn't matter to me. I wasn't really worried about it. But that's the only time she ever really came unglued. Other than that, as I say, I always felt like Susan was happy, and I don't know how she was when she wasn't around me, but she was always extremely happy around me, always. I mean, the pictures I've taken of her when she was around me, some of the last ones I took, I think we were on the ferry in February, and she was kind of doing ring around the pole. There's some poles in this one room on the ferry, and she just seems beautiful and happy. I mean, you know, and I was the one taking the pictures, and, you know, Josh was more concerned about getting pictures of the boys, and I like to get pictures of the boys, but I also like to get Susan in the picture. Mm-hmm. You know, and I can understand Josh. I mean, you know, after a while, you know, you're more interested in your little guys than you are in your wife. But you know, I know she knew I appreciated that she was, you know, a beautiful woman, and that she, you know, and as I say, we just got along. I don't think there's anything to suggest otherwise, at least in my recollection.
Was Josh ever bothered, or was he aware?
Yeah, he was. It bothered him. It only bothered, and he knew it, because sometimes we'd be doing things when he was in the room. Seriously, you know what I mean? It's really weird. It was bizarre, but he would sort of try to ignore it. You know, I mean, you could tell that he knew something was going on, but he would be ignoring it. And the reality is that. You know, after I told her that I was in love with her, she told him, and that's when he really, all of a sudden it was like, all this stuff that we've been doing together now is it's out in the open now, okay? Mm-hmm. Not really, not yes and no, because, you know, then he